Kia ora koutou, welcome along to the VUWSA 2022 Candidates Forum. My name is Neva. I will be hosting the session today and I am with Salient this year. Today we are looking at the role of Sustainability Officer. I'll be chatting to the candidates about what they can bring to the role and putting some of the questions that you've asked to them. And we are here with Teresa, who is running for the role of Sustainability Officer. Hi Teresa.
Kia ora. My name is Teresa Davenport and I'm a second year student at Victoria University. I'm studying a Bachelor of Science in Physical Geography and Environmental Science, and I hope to complete my Masters at Victoria University in Climate Change Science and Policy in the years to come. I'm super stoked to even be standing here and to be a candidate. I believe I will be the best person for this position for a multitude of reasons. I understand accessibility in all means, whether it's financially, time-driven, or based on other means. One thing I would also like to include within my campaign is the importance of kaitiakitanga. For people who aren't familiar with this word, I can give a rough translation, but there's no direct translation into the English language. It essentially means guardianship or protection. It is a way of managing the environment based on a Māori worldview, or te ao Māori. It's important that we keep the Māori voices involved within this role, as it is a crucial part of sustainability. We are unable to protect and care for our landscapes if we don't have the same respect for those who rightfully own the land and have kept it pristine in the past. Lastly, it's about keeping the university accountable for what they're doing and keeping the university as climate conscious as possible. With these three things, I believe I will be able to work towards keeping the university as sustainable as possible. My policies include I want to continue the work of the current Sustainability Officer to make the university as much fair trade accredited as possible, something which students have been advocating for years. I want to make composting from home more accessible for students to mitigate pollution and put our food waste to good use. I would like to encourage sustainable packaging from cafes around the university in an accessible way to mitigate waste and environmental harm. The university is not doing enough, in my opinion, and it would be my job as Sustainability Officer to make sure that they are. I'm always open to hearing your suggestions, so feel free to just come say hello to me if you see me walking around. I'm always open to have a kōrero with you, or my DMs are always open. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to your vote.
Perfect. Thank you for that great start. And we are here with Shuari, who is running for the position of Sustainability Officer and Education Officer as well.
Kia ora everyone. My name is Shuari Naidoo. I'm studying Political Science and Criminology. I'm running for VUWSA Sustainability and Education Officer for 2022. I will be driving this campaign with long-term goals and compassion, which drives my work as an activist and feminist. I have always been passionate about social justice and climate change, often involved in many ventures and clubs. I run my own business, Morocco Menstrual Cups, with a mission to provide affordable, sustainable, and cost-effective period products to counter the issue of period poverty and stigma in society. Morocco has been nominated for a Sustainability Award under the Girls in Business. I'm the president of the Victoria University Feminist Organisation, where we will be creating a podcast called Once Upon a Feminist to provide education and resources to women. I was named the Student Volunteer Army top volunteer across New Zealand, and I was a Y25 for the VUWSA. If elected, you will vote someone who prioritizes long-term and realistic strategies for VUWSA. While it is important to maintain sustainable practices, we need our goals to be attainable for students. And when I say attainable, I mean, are students involved? Can students afford or are even interested in being sustainable? And how can VUWSA incentivize students to be more sustainable? My policies and plans include providing free transport for students, incorporating Te Tiriti o Waitangi and Māori principles with an intersectional approach to sustainability on campus, continuing student engagement with Sustainability Week and other events, and collaborating with cultural and eco-friendly businesses and organisations to provide opportunities for students. What I plan as Sustainability Officer are free O-Week cups, an environmental committee with our rep groups, including our Māori and Pacifica groups, and accessible ebooks and textbooks for students. Collectivised action and inclusivity is at the core of my campaign, and we need more student input to improve sustainability on campus. Vote Shuari Naidoo for someone who is dedicated, hardworking, and will directly work with students. Thank you.
And we are here talking with Sophia, who is running for the role of Sustainability Officer. How are you going, Sophia?
So I wanted to run for Sustainability Officer this year because it's really important to me to be working towards a climate-friendly campus. And I can see that our student body is extremely conscious of environmental issues and the importance of working towards being carbon zero. But the student body just hasn't been empowered to really put their ideas into action. So there's so much discussion and desire happening there that I just really want to help facilitate. What I want to bring to VUWSA is a really clear transparency so that students can see this direct line between talking to us and then seeing actions implemented on campus. And this means that students will turn up to their classes and feel that it's an environment that really reflects their values and the importance of the environment to us. It's really important to me that Te Tiriti o Waitangi principles are lived throughout all of our environmental policies as well. So kaitiakitanga in particular is a really beautiful value to me because it kind of talks about that reciprocity and the idea of guardianship. So giving back to the environment and then also seeing those returns. So I want to see these live throughout our policies. And it's really important that our environmental policies reflect listening to Indigenous voices. So to me it's really important to have a strong Māori and Pacifica voice heard throughout our environmental policies, as well as mana wahine on our sustainability committee. So intersectionality and representation would be the focus of my term. So I'll chat a little bit about some of my initial policies, although of course this still, will respond to the needs of the student body. So looking through the university's long-term plan for reaching net carbon zero, it's pretty clear that the plan is nowhere near ambitious enough to make us a climate-friendly campus. I think we need to do way more, way faster to reach our goals. So our main two sources of emissions are from natural gas and electricity. They're about 25% each. And for some reason, our university still uses old heaters and old technology, which burns through natural gas really quickly, when we should be looking at heaters that use, electricity, and we should be looking to renewable sources of electricity as well. So I just think that our heating isn't good enough right now, and I want to push for more energy efficient alternatives on campus and to replace these heaters.
Perfect. Thank you for that great start. We're now going to kick in some questions that have been submitted by the student body, some of them for all the candidates today and some are specifically for your role. So we'll start with ones for the sustainability role. There's been someone submit about the Pacific community. So our Pacific community has been appropriated many times in the space of sustainability. How can you ensure that credit is given where it is due?
Yes, I think a big part about it is just keeping that open communication line open with the Pacific community. Just making sure that they're being included within all aspects whenever I do something. And yeah, I think that's just how I could best do it. It's just by communicating and making sure I'm being really open with what I'm doing.
How would you do that in the university context? So would you talk to PSC, other representative groups, or would you use the VUWSA platform and invite people in?
Use the VUWSA platform and try to invite people in, and just hopefully people will want to be involved. Yeah.
You mentioned the Pacific community and obviously Māori as well. There's been a few students talk about this, and one of the questions is our Pacific community has been appropriated many times in the space of sustainability. How can you ensure that credit is given where it is due?
Absolutely. That's a really important issue because in listening to Indigenous and Pacifica voices, it's so important to make sure that it's not speaking over their own voices or just using emotional labour, getting the Pacifica community to continue to just explain and explain without really doing enough to live that out or, truly listening to them. So the focus of my term would be to really open up opportunities for their voice to be heard and leadership in a way that respects their time, so respects the time of people and also the emotional capacity, because of course things like climate change are a hugely emotional issue as well. So I want to create the space for Indigenous and Pacifica voices to be heard and take action in the ways that they are able to do, and to really make sure that they are given credit for the ideas and for the work that they are doing, really shine the spotlight on their contributions. Yeah.
How come you are running for multiple roles on the VUWSA Executive this year?
I think both the Sustainability Officer and Education Officer really correspond with one another. One of the things I'm really passionate about is education and awareness, and I do this a lot with my other activities and ventures. So I think they really correspond to student-centric roles, which I'm passionate about. I'm quite a people's person, I'm quite good at communication, and that's something that I really want to get to the root of, and that's why I did both roles.
Are there any specific communication techniques or any examples you can provide of perhaps something you do should you fall into either of these roles to improve the relationships that VUWSA has with other groups, notably like PSC and Naitoda and the Rainbow Unity?
One of the things I would like to do is promote more educational events on campus. Specifically, we can incorporate rep groups into this. So I think there needs to be a lot more collaboration with organisations. And I think that really takes an intersectional approach to how we approach sustainability and education on campus. And so that's something I want to get to the core of.
Have you had any contact with the university's sustainability division so far in your campaign? Or have you talked to them about potential policies should you be successful in the role?
Unfortunately, I haven't. I have been in contact with the previous sustainability officer about some of my policies, but yeah, I definitely will now that you've brought it up, yes.
I've talked quite a bit with the previous sustainability officer, Sophia Dixon, and I really admire the work that she's done around campus. And we've had a lot of discussions around policies, because I've kind of talked to her about what the process is like and how she thinks that some of my policies could be put into action realistically. So I've talked to her about the realities of the being a VUWSA sustainability officer.
And you talked to the university's sustainability division, like separate from VUWSA. The university has its own sustainability department. Have you talked to them at all?
Sorry, no, I haven't directly.
Because they have been running campaigns and things throughout the university and are the ones who publish all the information that you've been referring to about the biggest energy uses in the university and that sort of thing. Have you considered perhaps looking into that or talking to them about how your policies could fit into the wider plan for the university?
Absolutely. I would be really keen to build a relationship with them and discuss how these might be put into action.
So first of all, have you had any contact with the university's sustainability division in your campaign so far?
No, I haven't, but I have been in contact with a number of rep groups and organisations, So I've been in contact with the National Disability Association, the DSA, the National Indians Association. I've been in contact with the Women's Collective, which I was a part of. I've been in contact with Thursdays in Black, our Pacific and Māori organisations, the Climate Clinic, and the president of my club, the UFO. I've been in touch with my executives. So I've really tried to connect with a number of organisations, specifically ones that value sustainability.
How do you personally practice sustainability?
Practice sustainability, I compost. I'm vegan. I don't try and spread that around because obviously vegans get a very bad flack from the public. I like to make sure all my flatmates are recycling. Like I'll pick rubbish out of the bin if they're not recycling. I don't have a car. I walk everywhere. And yeah, I think that's everything I do.
Right, so I run Morocco menstrual cups, and menstrual cups are a sustainable period product. And I've been using my cup for 2 years now, and I would really love more students and more people to use sustainable period products in any form, in period undies, menstrual cups. So I think when I incorporate that into my life, it's something that I do often.
And do you believe that buying 100% fair trade or ethical is affordable for the average student?
I believe that if it is made available on campus, that it would be a good option to have for students to be able to choose from. I understand that accessibility can be an issue with buying sustainable products. So I would love to see the Student Association perhaps able to slightly subsidise these fair trade products or just make it more accessible at the same time so that more students are able to choose that option. But to me, it's very important to have that option available so that students can choose to spend that 20 cents more to get that if they are able to.
Have you got a specific way in which, you mentioned a few things like the composting at home for students and the sustainable packaging here on campus, how will you go about getting those to happen, making them a real tangible result?
Yeah, so composting just isn't possible for a lot of renters because, you don't have that resource available to you. So I think working with a lot of community organisations like community gardens and things and trying to keep that line open with them and trying to use that as a way of doing it. Sustainable packaging is a bit more difficult on the other hand, but I believe that it is possible, and it is possible to make it accessible with, obviously I don't want to make something more expensive by making it sustainable, but because it's not going to be accessible. So I just really want to try and keep things accessible by, financially and, yeah.
How will students know that you've achieved goals? I think perhaps yours are quite tangible, solution focused, but if students were looking back, say in a year's time, if you were successful in this role, how would they be able to go oh yeah, Teresa actually did achieve all the goals she set out in her campaign, or at least some of them?
Yeah, so as she was saying, some of my policies are pretty tangible, so it's you kind of know if it's happened because you will be able to continue. But I also think that one issue that I've had with VUWSA is a bit I feel like they don't have an open communication. And I feel like that's one thing that I would like to do is just keeping that communication line open and I just want to hear what everyone's thoughts are just so I feel like everyone should be included.
You talked about having long-term goals that you're campaigning on. Can you give us an example of a long-term goal?
Right, so what I want to do is consultate and work with committees and rep groups in VUWSA. And I think when we talk long-term goals, we've got to think about, are these goals attainable? So while I want to have long-term goals, I need to look at what other groups can do within that. I think one of the first things I'd like to do is implement O-Week cups, and I'd like to do that constantly. And why I think this is a long-term goal is that I think it will last. It could be something that continuously happens in O-Week, and we make reusable cups more sustainable for students. And another thing I'd like to do is work with ebooks and textbooks on campus, because I think that goes into the core of what students can do and something that can really engage students.
When you talk about textbooks in that context, are you meaning textbooks converted to ebooks or a different way of using them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ebooks as in ebooks available online, but I also want to make secondhand textbooks more accessible, because I think there's lots of students would prefer to trade their books and make money off of it. And while there are websites on Facebook, I think this could be more widespread and really be a sustainable step for the university.
Are you aware of VicBooks campaign where you can return your old textbooks to VicBooks and they sell them on your behalf for a cheaper price?
I am aware of that, but I'd like to make it more widespread, because I wouldn't say the average first year or second year student knows about that. Or, I'd like to make it more widespread, even apart from VicBooks.
What is a previous campaign or cause that VUWSA has championed that's affected you, and how has it affected you?
I would probably say definitely Sustainability Week. I think that's because I really liked how VUWSA helped businesses and organisations, especially in that market, really reach out to students. And, because I'm also someone who runs a sustainability business, particularly one that's based on passion, so that really got to my heart, yeah.
So the free lunch and the breakfast campaign on Study Week last trimester I thought personally was really helpful to me. Like, that was a very stressful time for me. I was studying, I had in-person exams and I was really worried, and it was good to not have to think about cooking another meal. So yeah.
So I'd say one that's most directly affected me was the rent strike last year, where there was an issue of students potentially having to pay for the halls of residence that they weren't able to live in over the COVID lockdown. To me, this really highlighted the issue of both social justice and also the difficulties that students have affording things like accommodation and everyday kind of necessities. It meant a lot to me to see VUWSA fighting for their right to kind of get a fair deal and to be getting a fair option. And it meant a lot to see them succeed on that, and for students not to have to pay the full extent that they were potentially going to have to.
How would you deal with a conflict of interest should you become a member of the VUWSA Executive? Because as you said, you're the president of the feminist organisation here at Vic. You also run your own business. You've had a lot of involvement with lots of other associations and groups. How would you ensure that there's no conflict there between you helping out with VUWSA and being a part of these groups?
Right. I like to think of them as very separate ventures, two different mindsets. In conflict, do you mean conflict within the executive or conflict with the clubs?
A bit of both. So say you encountered it within the executive with conflicting viewpoints, or if it was, again, an influence that came in from outside. I guess what we're getting at here is how would you be able to make sure that your stance on an issue wasn't clouding your ability to make good decisions on behalf of students?
I don't think I'm someone who really who gets clouded in judgment, so I would always prioritize my job and the role I have to students over everything else. I would weigh the facts, and if I felt myself impartial, I perhaps would have to move away from the role, or perhaps even communicate. I think communication is key. Do I have the ability to manage the issue, or can I find another way to manage it?
Perfect. If you have a strong view on an issue, because obviously a lot of sustainability issues, there's quite a perception perhaps in the media that a lot of views when it comes to things like climate change and sustainability are strong beliefs that people have. How would you cope if you had a view on a sustainability issue that was then put to the student body and their viewpoint was opposing yours? Would you be able to put aside that conflict of interest and work through it?
Yeah, I think it's important to just try and imagine where that person is coming from. Everyone has grown up with different experiences in life, and I think it's important to just imagine, why is this person saying that? Can I imagine what it would be like to be in their shoes? And yeah, that's what I think I would try to do if I was considering someone else's opinion that I wasn't totally, agreeing with.
Any last message you'd like to send out to the student body today?
Just please vote and continue to be passionate. Don't get jaded. Don't give up.
Me for Sustainability Officer.
Please vote for me. I think I'm really passionate about sustainability and I have some great ideas. So yeah, please vote for me.